Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Better Sex Podcast. This is Jessa, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. We're going back to a personal story today, which I love doing, actually. And sometimes I get away from trying to focus on that and recruit people or, get the word out there that I'm open to doing personal stories, but I think they are so valuable to hear from real people who have had real struggles, who have made some progress or, sometimes total transformation, but at least, some sense of how things have worked out for them and what they're doing about whatever they've been struggling with. And today is one of those days. So before I talk about that, I do want to reinforce that any of you who are listening, if you would like to be featured on the podcast to share your personal story of dealing with some sort of sexual struggle, I would love that. So you can email me at, why don't you do change@jessazimmerman.com. Get in touch or go to the bettersexpodcast.com and look there. Get in touch. I do these anonymously, so you don't have to, nobody's got to know who you are. I get that this can be a very, very personal topic, but it is so impactful for other people to hear these struggles. And so that you realize you're not alone. Other people are going through this. Other people have, problems. Other people overcome things. I just think it's really, really important. So today, my guest, we'll call her Tammy, is talking about what it's like to live with Lichen Sclerosus, which is thought to be an autoimmune disorder, but they don't know much about it. And it shows up with potentially devastating symptoms, is often dismissed by doctors. You're told, it's in your head or it's no big deal, or, they don't take you seriously. So it can be a little challenging to get an accurate diagnosis and then get into treatment. But it's really important because damage that is irreversible can occur if you put off figuring out what's going on. So anyway, she's here to share about her experience of this condition, some input about what some other women experience, because she's very involved in some groups around this, and some ideas about what the treatment options are and what you can expect and how to get on top of this if it's going on for you. So anyway, I hope it's really, really useful. You may not have this, but someday someone in your life may, and it would be really important to be informed and get a jump on, maybe this is what's going on. Maybe it's lichen sclerosus. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the show. And before we start the show today, it is sponsored by Intimacy with Ease. It's a method to help otherwise happy couples achieve a sex life that is easy and fun for both of them, so you can actually just enjoy your sex life with zero stress. For more information, if you want to watch a brief little training video that's available, all of that, go to intimacywithease.com. So Tammy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Why don't we start, before I go back to, your living with lichen sclerosus, maybe we could just talk about what it is, first of all, because, not everybody's going to have heard of this. If they're struggling with it, they know the words, but otherwise,
right.
No.
Oh, goodness. Where to start? It's been quite a journey. It's a journey of never-ending learning because there's not a lot known about lichen sclerosus. There's really not a lot known for sure about it. It's believed to be an autoimmune condition. And as most people know, autoimmune is when your body attacks itself.
Okay.
And in this case, the autoimmune condition typically happens in the genitals. It can affect other areas of the body. I've heard of people with, itching and discomfort and some discoloration on their wrists, on their stomach, inner thighs, other places. But generally, what it's known for is how it impacts people because it affects the genitals.
Oh, I was just going to say, all genders. Is it just a female problem or no?
Generally women, and it does impact men as well. I believe I read recently it's typically men who are not circumcised have a greater problem with that.
Okay.
But I can't even say for sure about that because, in fact, this whole podcast will be a lot of they report that.
Yeah, right. We think maybe. Yeah, okay.
Maybe, right? So there are not very many definitives about it. The only thing I can say for sure is that it's painful and it's a lot of suffering for people.
Okay. And thought to be autoimmune related.
Strongly believed, as well as genetic.
Oh.
My mother has it too.
Wow. I'm wondering if that only just came out after years of suffering with it, or is that something you knew all along?
I think I've had it for many years. Oh, that's another thing that they believe about lichen sclerosus is that it's an old lady's disease.
Oh.
For when you go through menopause, and that's not true. I've heard read multiple stories of little girls being diagnosed with it, young women in their 20s. So I believe I've had it for many, many years. I had some of the symptoms, and then it went into overdrive when I was experiencing extreme levels of stress and anxiety.
Okay.
Which I think probably contributes to lots of things that people have.
Okay. So let's start at the beginning for you when you were first developing symptoms. Maybe you could talk about what it was like for you and then how else symptoms might appear that you didn't have, like what the range of experience is with this.
Okay. So the typical symptoms, including mine, were incredible itching of the vulva area. I've had some women tell me it feels like millions or thousands of ants crawling on their vulva.
I just made a face. I just, that's like, oh, that doesn't sound pleasant.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It is horrible. And burning, itching are the most common descriptions of what they're experiencing, but to the extreme level, not like a mosquito bite. I'll take a mosquito bite any day for that.
And is it persistent? Is it episodic?
It's generally, at least for me, it's persistent, although after medication, it is much less now.
Okay.
But it's always there. It never completely goes away, at least for me. Some women do report going into remission, and that's great, but it's generally considered a lifelong condition.
Okay. Is there any visual, is any evidence visually of something going on? Is it, red and inflamed, or the skin look different, or?
I went to the OBGYN. I said, something's wrong. And so I'm trying to remember. It's been so long. I believe she gave me medication for a yeast infection.
And how old were you roughly when you started?
Oh, I was probably 40. Let me think, 43.
Okay.
Yeah, about 43 or 44, actually 44. And I don't know, several weeks later, maybe, again, it's been quite a long time. I went back because I said, something's wrong. It's itching and I can't handle it. And I couldn't sit through class.
Wow.
I couldn't go to a restaurant. I couldn't sit still. I looked like the little kid with major ADHD.
Squirming in chair and yeah.
It was, I can't even describe it. It's so indescribable, the discomfort and misery. So she said, I'm going to do a biopsy. And she did a punch biopsy. That was not fun. Taking a pea-sized chunk of skin from your vulva area.
Which is already super sensitive and painful, right? Like, yes. Okay.
Yes. Inner labia is very, tender and sensitive. So it took a while to heal too. But anyway, she sent it in and it came back as lichen sclerosus. Oh, and you were asking for symptoms. So the itching, of course, but the visual, it can be many things. I did not really have anything that the doctor could see, but a lot of women will have kind of a white patch of skin or white patches. They might have irritation, but it could be so many other things. So that's kind of part of the problem too. So
it's possible to get a definitive diagnosis with a biopsy? Uh-huh. It's something that can be seen somehow on a cellular level? Is that what's going on?
Apparently so.
Wow.
Because that's how we figured it out. And then, of course, with my mom having it, it was pretty easy to say, okay, it was not, because of course a biopsy can have a false positive or something like that. But with my mom having it, I was pretty bummed, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So how long had you suffered with this before you figured out what it was?
I can remember some discomfort in my early 20s, I think. I'm trying to go back. and just some symptoms of it off and on throughout my life. And I just thought it was normal. Oh, my arm itches sometimes too. And if I felt any extra discomfort, I would use Vagisil cream, which worked wonders. Would go away. It was just such relief until, when I really started having problems and I couldn't use enough Vagisil to make me feel better.
Wow. Yes.
It was horrible.
Wow.
Yeah. So very, very uncomfortable and embarrassing and shameful. Nobody really to talk to.
Yeah. Because you must have gone from thinking, well, this is normal. My arm itches sometimes too, to, whoa, something might be fundamentally wrong with my genitals.
Yes. And there's that scary thought, do I have some kind of STI or something going on that I don't know how that would happen, but I was terrified of something or cancer or anything. I just could not figure out what could be causing this. But when you feel something like bugs crawling all over you and there's no bugs, there were no bugs, just to be clear, something's wrong. And so, and I was also misdiagnosed twice with bacterial vaginosis. My OBGYN was like, no, you have no signs of that. So, yeah.
It sounds to me too like you had a decent doctor. Because the statistics are women have to see 6 or 7 different doctors before they get a diagnosis about what's causing pain. And
I so appreciate hearing this. You can't even imagine. And all the women who are going to be listening to this, because I announced it on the Lichen Sclerosus pages on Facebook, they're going to be so happy to hear that, because yes, it's hard to find a good doctor who really listens, and mine is amazing. I told her, if you ever move to anywhere, Mississippi, New York, wherever I'm going.
Or at least you're going to fly in for appointments or something, right?
Yeah. Something like that, because she's been amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because that's really striking that she stuck with you and quickly did the right, took it seriously, did the test, figured out what it is. I mean, that's really great.
Yes, she listened to me and she ruled out other things. She was empathetic, beyond empathetic. She knew also what I was dealing with at the time, which was graduate school and about to go through a divorce and all kinds of other things. So dealing with a lot of stress.
Yeah. And you said it was that tremendous stress that kind of aggravated this at that time, right? That's your belief that's why it kind of blew up?
I do think that triggered it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's just a guess, because that's how lichen sclerosus works.
So over the years, how did this impact your sex life and your own sense of sexuality? So, yeah, that's a really good question. For me personally, so first of all, I have a Mormon background. So, I was married at the time, and without going into details, we'll just say there wasn't much of a sex life, so it really didn't impact that. Okay. But that's what made me wonder, how could I have an STI? But you never know who you're married to, whatever's going on there. But so, yeah, moving forward, though, it's terrifying, because here's the thing. For every woman who finds out they have lichen sclerosus, my first response would be careful when you go to Google, because Google has all kinds of answers that you don't want to see. And it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. That is probably my greatest worry, is what's to come, not what is right now. Generally speaking, my body looks normal, looks healthy, my vulva looks like a vulva should look like, probably for a 50-year-old. I should mention that we change over time. But the implications are not, how do I want to say it? Basically, potential for all kinds of things to happen that could make a sex life difficult or impossible. And I want to say this for all the ladies out there who may hear this, who do have lichen sclerosus. This is probably one of the bigger areas that it impacts, is their sex life. I've read so many stories of women whose partners have walked out, who don't believe them or think they're exaggerating. It almost brings me to tears even talking about it, because it's so not okay. I do want to say, though, on the other hand, there are a lot of women who reported that their partner or spouse was very supportive and loving and willing to work with them. There were women who, I read one story a long time ago. One woman said, I haven't had sex in 13 years and we finally were able to. 13 years with her husband. Those are the terrifying things that I worry about. So
on a personal note, I did bring this up to my partner the other night because I did see some changes, and I think it's kind of hard because we're not as fortunate as men. We don't look down and see a penis. Right. It's not like right in front of us. So it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. But anyway, I was very upset, and it was the middle of the night because I couldn't sleep because I was worried about it. And I finally called him at 2:30 in the morning and told him what I was thinking. And he literally said, "It's going to be okay. We have more body parts. We have hands and mouths and all kinds of other things." And I thought, oh, I'm going to keep this boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
because that's exactly what I would wish every woman to hear.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to just take a short little break here, and I want to let you know about Intimacy with Ease, the method that helps otherwise happy couples create a sex life that is fun, easy, light for both people. So if you are an otherwise happy couple, if sex is the elephant in the room or sex is the little bit of the challenge for you guys, you may want to check this out. You can go to intimacywithease.com and you'll see information there. You'll see short videos. You'll have access to a full webinar about it, all kinds of information to let you know if this would be the right thing for you. So I think what I'm gathering is that pain is going to be the obstacle here.
Well, the pain, but also the changes in the vulva. So I should probably go into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So lichen sclerosus is not just pain. What happens is it depends on every woman is different. Some women have very few symptoms. Some women have lots of symptoms. So one thing that happens is the inner labia are often fused to the outer labia, or it might be just one side, and then sometimes completely absorbed, gone, like they were never there. And if you look at pictures on Google, and you can find images of that, it looks like something's wrong, clearly. And so that's one thing. The vaginal opening shrinks, basically, making sex impossible without tearing and absolutely causing severe, damage, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
The clitoris and the clitoral hood, they call it clitoral phimosis, where the clitoral hood will fuse to the clitoris, and it makes it less sensitive. It makes it so that it's painful, just like with men with lichen sclerosus who are not circumcised. So with a typical clitoris, you can take the hood and kind of move it over the clitoris and expose the prepuce, or the head of the clitoris. Right. And in the case of phimosis of the clitoris or fusing, you can't do that. So it makes it less sensitive. It can make it painful, different for every person.
Okay.
Tearing. The skin tears. And that's one of the most painful things, is the skin tearing. The labia are sensitive, the perineum. And this affects more than just the vulva or the end of a penis. It affects what we call the figure eight area. So it goes from the back, basically.
Wow.
It makes going to the bathroom painful, sitting, walking.
Wow.
It makes all of that painful when people are having flares, constantly having to use coconut oil or emu oil or different products so that your skin doesn't chafe and inflame. And
so it sounds like the skin gets really fragile. You've got this whole fusing going on in the whole area, and then you've got just the basic discomfort of that itchy, burny feeling. That's a lot.
It is a lot. And then there's, of course, the mental health issues that it causes, and the sexual health and relationship issues. It's very sad that there's so little known about it. And I do believe it's very underdiagnosed. Yeah. So, which goes back to my really good doctor who found it very quickly. I'm so grateful.
Yeah. So what are the treatment options? What kind of treatment have you undergone once you had to move past Vagisil?
Yeah, definitely had to move past that. It was doing nothing at that point, but I had to write it down because I can't remember the names of medications, even though my boyfriend is a pharmacist.
Well, you don't need to remember, right?
Right? So generally they'll start out with, I think the most common treatment is using clobetasol. Clobetasol is, they have cream and they have ointment. Basically, cream is colored, it's like white, and ointment is see-through clear. So they have, I guess you could say, mild, moderate, or medium and strong steroids. Clobetasol would be on the strong end. And then the next one down, which is what they started me on first, which is called triamcinolone. And that's a more moderate steroid. And then in a pinch, hydrocortisone, which we use on, itching and little things like that. So, and I have been in that circumstance. I was panicked. I went somewhere, I traveled, and I didn't have my clobetasol. Oh no, what am I going to do? And thank goodness having a pharmacist around. He said, hydrocortisone. I said, I can't use that. He said, of course you can. Yeah. Listen to me. Okay, you're the pharmacist. I will listen. And he was right. So in a pinch. So those are the three things that we use, and that's about it.
And I don't know much about how steroids work or what they're exactly doing, but it sounds like you're treating, it's important for the skin. It's not like it's a hormonal issue or something. You're supporting the tissue. There
are a lot of people that believe it's hormone related. That's why they think it's the, quote, old lady's disease and related to menopause because of hormonal changes. And there's probably potential for that to be true. That's one of the unknowns. Yeah. And so that figure 8 area, which is basically the vulva, the perineum, the anal area, all of that should have clobetasol or the whatever you're prescribed on it. And there are other options. Some people react badly to that. So for me personally, clobetasol. The problem that I had was I did not know that it could spread to other places. So I'm learning the hard way with discomfort that it does go from front to back. And unfortunately, it can be really bad that way too.
Wow. And so is this something that you use that cream every day for sort of the rest of your life? You mentioned flare-ups. So, if it...
Yeah. So initially I was told to use it daily for 2 weeks. I believe it's been a long time. And then after that, go down to, a couple times a week and then once a week. And I did some reading and tried to go to about once a month, but that doesn't work. So I use it about once a week to 2 weeks and probably more frequently now since I realized that it spreads to other places and I wasn't using it on other places. So that was a hard lesson to learn. And here's the thing, to give credit to my gynecologist, it's really a dermatological problem.
Right.
So she happened to know about it. And dermatologists don't always know about it. So I don't know why.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of a hard time imagining I'm going to the dermatologist. Here's my vulva. I don't know that. I don't associate that. I don't know if they do typically.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You think, universities or I don't know where they learn about it, but thankfully she knew. And so that's okay. I learned and I can read. So, right. And I've done a lot of reading since then. I just did not realize that. And even though I had read it, I didn't connect it. I thought, no, it's only affecting my vulva. So I'm okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm not okay.
So would you speak to sort of the mental health, emotional health aspect of this about what it's been like to live with? And I know you're part of groups too, so you hear from an awful lot of women. What are I don't know if there's stages to this or what's the palette of things people are likely to feel and think when this is going on?
The first thing you think of is fear. The first thing you feel, the first thing you feel is fear, or at least the first thing I felt, fear, terrified. What is this going to do to me? What is this going to do to my relationship? No one will ever, I was just getting ready to get divorced. What is this going to look like moving forward? Oh, great. Now I'm divorced. No one's going to want me.
Yeah.
That is literally what I thought. Nobody will want me. What man is going to want to be with a woman who says, I really like you, but I can't have sex with you ever? Because that's what I thought was going to happen. Right. That's why you don't want to Google it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get the worst case scenarios. So that's the main thing. Will I ever be able to have sex again? And then, as most of us who are mental health providers know, chronic pain is related to depression, our self-worth, desire issues. In this case, it can affect it. Why would I want to have sex when it's painful? Right. So yeah, it was kind of all over the place. But after you live with it for a while, you learn that, okay, I've got this. I'm okay. And I'm going to be okay. Having a supportive partner really makes that better.
Right. And it sounds like with the variety of ways symptoms can show up and everybody has a different progression or experience, it's not like sex has got to be off the table necessarily for somebody, right? Or not all maybe it flares up and you can't and then you can again.
So I haven't really had, actually I take it back. I had one flare up and it was related to soap, just regular soap that you use in the shower. Mm-hmm. And so I've learned that I don't let shampoo, conditioner, soap, anywhere run down my body. Nope.
Yeah.
So I find ways. So a flare-up means in my case, an extremely red fire engine red inflamed vulva.
Wow.
And it was unbelievably painful. And that's where I was like, I can't walk, I can't sit, I can't be comfortable no matter what I'm doing.
Right.
And it's terribly embarrassing and shameful. So, it's thankfully under control now, and I'm back to normal. Yeah.
All right. So you've got fear. You just mentioned embarrassment and shame, as if something is really wrong with a part that shouldn't be wrong. Right.
Yeah. And the shame is related to, a lot of things. First of all, the first thing people think is she has an STI.
Yeah.
Or I fear that people will think that. And because there's so much stigma about sexually transmitted infections.
Right.
And now I've overcome that too. Even if that were true, that's not true. But if it were, I know that, people catch viruses at the movie theater, and nobody makes fun of them for catching the flu there. So I've learned to think about STIs that way.
And this is not contagious, right? Is there any risk? There's no risk to a partner if you did engage in sex, right? This isn't a skin condition that you could catch, right?
It's not you can't really catch an autoimmune condition to my knowledge. I've never heard of that, but no.
Yeah.
But that's the fear for sure. And understandably, because, the partner if they think that, they're thinking of their own future as well. It's going to impact me negatively. So understandable in that sense, but it's terribly misinformed.
Yeah. All right. So if anybody's listening and first we've got people listening who know they have lichen sclerosus, but if they don't know, let's say that, something's going on and they're only vaguely aware. It sounds like the itching or burning is going to be the thing that gets their attention, and it's worth figuring that out.
Yes. And it's often misdiagnosed as a yeast infection, which is, that's okay. That's the first line of treatment. Let's figure out if this is a yeast infection. Fair enough. It's not a yeast infection. What do we do next? I'm not a doctor, so I can't say, but to keep pushing it out, here's the problem. The farther you push out any kind of biopsy to find out if it's lichen sclerosus, the more damage that will be done that's irreparable.
And damage, you're talking about the fusing, basically?
Yes, the fusing
and the tearing, right.
And the absorption of the inner labia.
Yeah. All right, so would you talk just a bit about the support that's available, or the role of support in living with this? Because you're obviously involved in some Facebook groups about this that must just be so important to women that are suffering with this. Yes,
the groups are amazing. There's quite a few groups on Facebook. There were so many that I'm in a few. I got kicked out of one. I told them I was going to be on a podcast, and for whatever reason, they kicked me out.
Oh no, this got you kicked out of one.
I don't know why, but I'm glad because they were rude about other things too. And so anyway, I'm in some that are much more supportive, and many women were very excited that I was going to do this podcast. So I hope I do them justice by letting the public know what this is. So some of the groups are support groups. There's a group for women with lichen sclerosus and intimacy issues. There are groups that have men and women in them. So there's quite a few. I'm in at least 3 of them. I was in 4, but
yeah. And it just sounds, just like with anything that we're struggling with, it's so helpful to find other people with similar and yet different experiences, and to be able to be open and realize you're not alone, right?
Yeah, it's also helpful because there just aren't enough people. It's not like I can go meet for coffee with all the women around in my neighborhood with lichen sclerosus. So, cancer, that would be different. And that is a risk, by the way, for lichen sclerosus.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, there's no groups like that other than online that I know of. So anyway, yes, lichen sclerosus, there is a higher risk of women getting, I had to write it down, vulvar intraepithelial neoplasia, which is like a precancer.
Wow.
Yeah. They call it VIN. And it's a precancer, and there's probably other cancers as well. A lot of women with lichen sclerosus, they have other autoimmune conditions as well. So
right. I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story about this and spreading, I know you're out here like, let's get the word out and support women with this. And it's so important. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's very important to me. And one more thing I forgot when you were asking about treatments for it. I failed to mention, so clobetasol and the other ointments are specifically for things like lichen sclerosus and other problems that I'm not aware of. But anyway, but there are some other treatments. Or do we have time?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of them, I read about this today. One of them is called the Mona Lisa Touch. And I believe it's used by Dr. Andrew Goldstein, who is in both Washington, D.C. and New York City. He's probably the most well-researched doctor on lichen sclerosus. And apparently they use a specific machine, and you have to use that machine. Yeah. That's what I've learned, not a knockoff machine. And basically it's a procedure where they use a laser to stimulate collagen production. And so I did read up today, and there appears to be some positive responses for some women, not all women. Yeah. And then there's something called the tulip procedure, and I could not find any real positive results from that. And I did also see comments about it. This is not coming from me. I want to be clear because I really don't know, but comments about it not being a good procedure, that it was a scam and that kind of thing. But the Mona Lisa Touch definitely has helped women with menopausal issues and dryness, and apparently it is showing some promise for lichen sclerosus.
Yeah, it sort of just reinforces the importance of finding a doctor who knows their stuff about this and is going to be up to date with the research and the treatment options.
That was one of the biggest problems I saw reported. Of course, the women who got, positive responses from their doctors aren't going to, speak up. But a lot of women were not believed. They were kind of left hanging for a while, and the progress of this disease, if they're not using a steroidal ointment, can be really devastating. So I have a friend who, she ended up having a severe yeast infection, but kind of went through the same thing where she wasn't believed. She had 5 biopsies, 5. And even her OBGYN now says, what happened to you? You have some scarring. But yeah, she had to bring her husband at one point to get them to believe her that something was really wrong. They sent her to a therapist, and I think it's great to go to a therapist, especially to deal with the anxiety that this can bring on and the depression. But it kind of sent the message to her that they thought she was crazy.
Right. It's in her head somehow. And it's
in her head. That is the biggest thing. It's in her head, and no woman is going to make this up. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned Andrew Goldstein. I'm actually interviewing Irwin Goldstein tomorrow. They wrote the book together with the third person, When Sex Hurts. And that is one of my favorite resources for any woman struggling with sexual pain, because it goes through all the different things that could be going on and gives you a little bit of a head start in figuring out what it might be. And it's something you could bring into your doctor and be more informed to really work towards a diagnosis. So
I'm going to have to read that.
Yeah, it's really good. So,
and who's it by again?
Well, Irwin Goldstein and Andrew Goldstein, and a third person whose name I cannot remember at the moment. Okay. I was just going to look around for my copy, but it's not within reach. So,
and I know it was Andrew Goldstein that I saw today when I was, just reading up a little bit. But I'm wondering if one is the father.
I don't know that they're related, but it's been a while since I actually read the book, so I'm not sure.
Because I have heard the name Goldstein from the time I was diagnosed, and so anyway, it's the Goldsteins.
Exactly.
They're really the ones who have all of the information. Yeah. So
great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and being on the show. And I'm sorry it cost you a Facebook group.
Oh no, no. I probably would have left earlier if I had any sense about me, because there were other issues as well, but it's okay. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate you letting me share my story. And I hope the women out there know to stand up for themselves when they feel like they're not being heard.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.